Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Annie Pettit, and I am the Chief Research Officer of Peanut Labs, newly joined with Conversation, and a partner company of Research Now. Data quality, whether it's surveys or social listening research, has been a passion of mine for a number of years, and that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. We all know that the generalizability of results from surveys depends massively on collecting good quality data. Poorly designed surveys, lengthy surveys, boring surveys, all of those things contribute to bad data and incorrect action outcomes. Essentially, bad surveys waste your time and your money. And of course, we also have concerns about the responders themselves and whether they are doing the best that they can to answer honestly and accurately. Responders who aren't paying attention to surveys also lead to bad data and incorrect action outcomes. Now, surveys used to be a cool and fun thing to do online. Just 5 or 10 years ago, there really wasn't much else in the online space. Now, one of the main problems our survey responders encounter now is the massive presence of social media. Yes, social media is a good thing. It's how we collect millions of opinions about brands and companies through Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. But social media is also a very big distractor to those of us in the survey world. Instead of answering a survey, you could just as easily upload a picture of your lunch onto Facebook, tweet about some gossip you just heard, text your friends about your evening plans, or dream about food and houses on Pinterest. So with all of these fun things to do online, we have to understand that our surveys are competing with many, many things that are far more interesting than answering a survey. I'm even betting that some of you are doing those things right now while I'm talking. Now, when we look at the data quality of surveys, we've got to wade through several different kinds of people, and two of those people are of particular importance today. Now, first, we desperately want to find lazy Larrys. We want to find the people who are masking themselves as someone else, maybe a young man pretending to be a new mother, or a bot that's just randomly choosing any answer option. As much as we don't want it to happen, there are people out there who are simply answering surveys to get to that teeny tiny little pot of gold at the end. They'll say anything as long as they can get an incentive. We don't want their answers, and we don't want to give them incentives. We need to find and get rid of lazy Larrys. But at the same time, we need to recognize that there are a lot of good, honest, hardworking people who are doing their best when they answer their surveys. I'll call these folks Good Faith Gail. Now, Gail, she leads a busy life. She goes to work every day. She takes the dog for walks. She cooks and cleans. She cares for her aging mother. She parents her children, those little anchor biters that for some reason constantly want mommy's attention. Unfortunately, all of these pieces of her life mean that she can never truly pay complete attention to our surveys. She would like to, and she tries, but the ankle biters are far more important than our surveys. What it means is that sometimes she makes mistakes in her answers. She didn't mean to, but it just happened. So what we really need to do as researchers is figure out how to separate Lazy Bum Larry from Good Faith Gail. And that's the task we set to demonstrate here. Now, for this study, we designed a generic survey about cereal with lots of different kinds of questions. There were grid questions, some of them really long, some of them written kind of poorly. There are also lots of select all that apply questions, open ends, rating questions, and much more. We gave our responders every possible opportunity to respond to many different types of questions correctly and incorrectly. The survey was completed by more than 8,000 people, so we've got a pretty reliable sample size here. And based on the question types in the survey and the various ways that people could answer questions properly or not, we came up with 30 potential errors that could be made. And then we calculated the number of errors that each person made. Now, some people made no errors, other people made 1 or 2 errors, and other people made all 30 errors. And at that point, we grouped people into buckets according to how many errors they made. So, are you curious about how many errors people made? Just say yes here. Okay. The good thing is that 23% of our responders made 0 errors. Lovely, lovely people that we would like to see on every single survey. I'm actually quite surprised that so many people did such a great job, seeing as I can't even write a simple email without making a typo. The problem, however, is that 77% of our responders made some kind of error somewhere on the survey. It may have been a tiny error, or it could have been a series of terrible errors. Either way, 77% of people could potentially be classified as poor responders. But we know this isn't fair. Fortunately, it's relatively easy to find the people who made lots of terrible errors and delete their responses to our survey. But we don't want to delete good faith Gale. We want to keep the data from responders who only made a couple of small errors simply because they were distracted or misunderstood a question. We need a way to tease apart the Gales from the Larrys. So to do this, we grouped our responders into demons who made many errors and angels who only made 1 or 2 errors. And now we can see which errors the demons made and which errors the angels made. So with this knowledge, we can figure out how to only penalize people who make demon errors. So let's look at the errors and see what we've got. Now, red herring questions are a favorite of lots of researchers. All you have to do is insert a fake answer into your question, a cereal brand you made up, a car brand you made up, a bank name you made up. Then you know when people choose that brand name, it can't possibly be a real answer. Now, in our survey, we did indeed see people choosing the red herring answer. In fact, about 6% of our angels chose a red herring answer, and about 15% of our demons chose the red herring answer. Now, I don't know about you, but that difference really isn't great enough for me to say that anyone who chooses a red herring is a bad responder and their data should be removed. I know for a fact that the brand names we make up often sound like real brand names, or they're just local brand names that don't show up in a Google search. It would be completely unfair to delete 6% of the data just because they chose a red herring. I'm betting many people listening in today have done that. Maybe now it's time to think twice. But here's a completely different story. When we identify who selects 2 red herring answers, it's suddenly very clear who the angels and demons are. Only 1% of angels chose 2 red herrings, but 40% of demons chose 2 red herrings. Now, I really don't have a problem if the data from the demons is deleted. When 40% of demons, people who make errors all over the place, choose 2 red herrings, I know that 2 red herrings is a great indicator of poor data quality. Speeding is another one of our favorite data quality measures. In this case, we see that about 8% of angels and 40% of demons were in the fastest half of the normal curve. That alone is a really nice difference between the groups. Demons are speeders, there's no other way around it. But I still don't want to delete 8% of data just because my angels are very computer literate, can type really well, can read quickly, and have some experience answering surveys. I'm not convinced at all at this point. But If we ramp up the definition of speeding, we've now got a case where none of our angels got a speeding ticket, and 30% of our demons got a speeding ticket. Essentially, the fastest 1.5% of people were all demons. Delete away, and your angels will all be safe. This is a great measure to use. One of my favorite data quality measures is straight lining. Not necessarily because of its effectiveness, but generally because we're very bad at implementing this solution. Many times when we write a grid question, we don't use best practices in question design. Every single item in the grid is phrased in a positive way. So we might ask responders to indicate how much they agree with a number of statements. Statements like, the cereal tastes good, it smells good, it looks good, the price is good, the box is good. And in this case, it makes perfect sense for someone to strongly agree with every one of the items. That's not straight lining, that's bad question design. And in our survey, we found that about 14% of our angels straight lined on a bad question just like that. Sure, 60% of our demons straight lined, but do you really want to automatically delete 14% of angels just because they answered honestly? I just don't think so. Unfortunately, our survey also included a well-designed grid question. In this case, responders were asked how much they agreed with each statement. There were some positive and negative statements in there. For instance, this cereal tastes good. It smells bad. It looks good. It's too expensive. The box is pretty. So people answering honestly would only rarely straight line, and that's what our results showed. Only 3% of angels straight lined on a well-designed question, whereas 60% of demons straight lined. So if you write a best practice grid, then absolutely use straight lining as one of your data quality measures. Now I'd like to share with you my new favorite data quality question. Sadly, it relies on our basic number and reading comprehension skills. In this case, we asked our responders to rank order 8 items from 1 to 8 without duplicating any numbers. About 8% of our angels failed this measure, and about 50% of demons failed it. These people chose the same number twice, or they chose a number that wasn't from 1 to 8, like 0 or 12. Some people even put the same number for every single item. Now, the fact that 8% of angels failed this does make me a bit nervous. But when 50% of demons fail, I've really got to pay attention to it. We can also look at contradictions to answers. For instance, if there are 5 people in your household, you should spend more than $10 a week on groceries. In this case, about 8% of angels contradicted themselves only once, and about 40% contradicted themselves twice. However, about 74% of demons contradicted themselves twice. Unfortunately, contradictions are not a guaranteed way to identify demons, as contradictions do catch a lot of angels. Some of that is due to bad question wording, and some of that is simply due to different interpretations of the wording. It's too bad. It's too bad that it's just not consistent. Now, what about open ends? Are those helpful? Well, in our survey, about 1% of angels shared less than 10 characters, compared to about 57% of demons. So this also seems to be a good indicator of quality data. Sure, we penalize about 1% of our angels, but we also get rid of so many poor responders. Another option to look at is non-traditional behaviors. For instance, there are a number of products that people are more likely to buy at a grocery store, like meat, bread, vegetables. There's also a number of products that people are less likely to buy at a grocery store, maybe clothes or shoes. Now, in our survey, about 13% of angels said they had bought non-grocery items at a grocery store, and this is in comparison to 37% of demons. Now, I don't like the idea of deleting 13% of angels, so this kind of question didn't work at all. So that's just too bad. Now we'll reach the last type of data quality questions that I'll review today. This question asks responders which brand in a list they recognize. Brands like Kellogg's, Adidas, iPhone. We saw that about 4% of our angels knew only one or two of the brands, compared to 48% of the demons. With huge brand names like these, you would expect everyone to know every brand. But that's really an unreasonable expectation. If you're a new immigrant, you would not know all these brand names. If you're a non-shopper or a non-consumer, sadly like me, you might not recognize all these brand names. We can't assume that our survey responders have the same life experiences that we do. And we can't assume that our survey responders know all the same brand names we do. In this case, if we were to delete data based solely on this one question, we would lose 4% of our angels. Not terrible, but not good either. Now, after all of those examples, I hope a few things have come to mind to you. First, although 23% of our responders answered the survey perfectly, they are the minority. I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, and there's no way we should expect our responders to be perfect. We know that many of our responders are acting in good faith. They have kids at their feet, a boss on the phone, a spouse calling them to dinner, and all these things mean that we do not have their 100% attention. And honestly, why should they give us 100% of their attention? I'd love to know how many people in the audience today were not tweeting, or reading emails, or Facebooking, or finishing up a report while they listen to me. If you can't pay 100% attention, why should anyone else? Now, more importantly, what we really need to do is improve how we write our surveys. Historically, our practices have been quite poor. We've used only one or two questions to pick out people who weren't paying attention. Very often, we used terrible grid questions where every single option is phrased in a positive way, making it nearly impossible to not straight line. We failed to recognize that real human beings get distracted and make mistakes. Even good-intentioned, honest, reliable people, like your mom or your grandpa, and don't tell me your grandma is in it just for the incentive. So here's what we can and should do. If you want to penalize demons, use a red herring question. But make sure you incorporate 2 red herring items, not just one. And on top of that, not instead of, make sure your grids incorporate both negative and positive phrasing so that you can actually measure straight lining. And also, see if there's a place where a ranking question would be appropriate. Demons have high failure rates on ranking questions, so we should use that to our advantage. And of course, do a simple character count on open ends, the ones that every responder should have a reasonably lengthy response to. The most important thing is to make sure that we're measuring multiple errors. We saw repeatedly throughout this paper that angels make mistakes. They make all kinds of mistakes, not just the obvious or easy ones. Angels are not perfect. They will make a mistake, but they will not make 3 or 4 or 5 mistakes. So the next time you prepare a survey, make sure it's designed to penalize demons and not angels. Thank you, everyone, for your attention. I hope you learned a couple things.